This is Geometry, Section 1.8, Introduction to Perimeter and Area. So, we've got these four shapes right here: square, rectangle, triangle, and circle. We're going to talk about how to find the perimeter and area of all of those things. So, start with a square. Perimeter basically means the distance around a shape. So for a square, all the sides are the same. So we're just going to call all of those sides S for now. So the perimeter of a square would be S plus S plus S plus S, or 4 times S. I would just take 4 times whatever one of the side lengths is, because they're all the same. For the area of a square, we're going to multiply these two sides together. So it would be S times S, or we would write that as S squared. For a rectangle, it's pretty similar to a square, except we call the sides of a rectangle the length and the width. You might also see them as base and height, which we'll talk about when we get to triangle. So length and width, or base and height, for the perimeter, I would add the 2 widths plus the 2 lengths, or 2 times the width plus 2 times the length. For the area, I'm going to multiply these two things together, just like I did for a square. So for a square, they were the same thing. For a rectangle, they're different, but I still just multiply them together, length times width, or width times length. For a triangle, it's a little bit different. So for a triangle, I'm going to call these sides A, B, and this whole side C. So for the perimeter, I would just add up all the sides, A plus B plus C. For the area of a triangle, this is very important. This dotted line right here represents the height of the triangle. Height meaning how tall it is, basically. So from the bottom to the top, that's the height of the triangle. The area of a triangle is going to be 1/2 times its base times its height. Very important for a triangle. Your base and your height must meet with a right angle. They must be perpendicular to each other. And we'll talk about that when we see examples below. That's very important. Alright, for a circle, we don't call the perimeter of a circle its perimeter. We call it circumference. So this is basically the perimeter of a circle. We call it the circumference. So for a circle, we've got this thing that goes from the center of it to the outside edge. We call it the radius. The distance from the center of the circle to the outside edge is the radius, and it's the same all the way around the circle, no matter where you draw it. So the circumference, or the perimeter of a circle, is going to be 2 times this number pi that I'm sure you've heard of before. Pi is approximately 3.14 times its radius. So 2 times pi times the radius will give you the distance around the circle. The area of a circle is going to be that same number pi times whatever the radius is squared. So you would square the radius and then multiply it by pi to find the area of a circle. Important note for units when we're talking about these things. So perimeter and circumference are both measured in either inches, feet, meters, kilometers, whatever you're using. And area is measured in inches squared, feet squared, meters squared, etc. So whether you're talking about perimeter or area, make sure you're using the correct units. So practice finding the area of each figure shown below. Here we've got a triangle, so we need to find a base and a height. And remember, it's very important that our base and our height are perpendicular to each other. So luckily for this triangle, we've got that these two sides right here, this side and this side, are already perpendicular to each other. So we're going to use that as our base and our height. Even though this is not really on the bottom, we normally think of the base as being on the bottom of the triangle, we can still use this as our base and our height since those are perpendicular to each other. If it helps you to turn your paper to look at it so that the base is on the bottom, that's fine. So we've got to figure out what those are. Since these are horizontal and vertical lines, it's easy to figure out the distance of those because we can just count it on the grid. So this one would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units long. And if I count this one right here, this one would be 9 units long. So my base would be 9, my height would be 6. To find the area, I'm just going to multiply those together. 9 times 6, and then for a triangle, I need to remember to multiply by a half also. So 1/2 times the base times the height. 9 times 6 is 54, times a half would be 27. This next one, these next two, are actually a little bit tricky because I don't have two sides that are perpendicular on either of these triangles. So Whenever you're using a triangle that's on a grid like this, it's always easiest to find a side that's either horizontal or vertical. Because like we did over here, we just counted the distance between these endpoints or these vertices to figure out the length of that side. So here, I can figure out the length of this side. If I count all of these units right here, I would get that this side is 11 units long. Now, I don't have a side that's perpendicular to it. So, like I said, sometimes it helps. We're going to say that this is our base. This is 11. Sometimes it helps to turn your paper so that that is on the bottom, so you can see it more clearly. I can't do that on here, but if you want to turn your paper so that 11 is on the bottom, it might help you see what we're going to do a little bit clearly. So we need to figure out the height of this triangle if this is our base. That means we need to figure out how tall it is. What's the distance between this line and the opposite corner of the triangle? So to figure that out, I know that the base and the height need to be perpendicular to each other. So from this point, if I draw a horizontal line right here to this side, this base of 11 that I'm using, this is horizontal and this is vertical, so those two things are going to make a right angle. So this would be my height. That is your height. You need to find the length of your height. So if you count from here, this corner of the triangle, to this side straight across, you're going to get that that is 8 units long for your height. So again, your area is going to be 1/2 times your base times your height. 8 times 11, or 11 times 8, is 88, and half of that is 44. This next example is the trickiest out of all of them. So again, you want to look for a side that's flat against the grid, either horizontally or vertically. So we're going to use this as our base right here, and luckily it's on the bottom for us. So if I count this right here, this is 5 units long, so that's my base. Now, if I figure out the height, like I did before, so if I figure out the distance from this side to the top of the triangle, I run into a problem because the triangle stops right here. So this isn't the full height of the triangle because the triangle goes all the way up here to this point. So how we're going to find our height is we're going to extend this base that we had. We're just going to extend this line straight across. Now, if I look at this highest point of the triangle, I can figure out the height of the triangle if I extend it all the way down to where my base is. I extended my base. I need to find the height from here to here. It'd be the same as if I started here at the base and went all the way up to here, because this is where the triangle stops. It goes up to here. This is the height of the triangle. So I would count this distance from here to here. That distance would be 10. These two things are perpendicular. Base and height are perpendicular. So I know that I'm good there. Height is 10. Area would be 1/2 times my base times my height. 5 times 10 is 50. Half of that would be 25. So, circle. I've got to find the radius of a circle. That's the most important part. The center of the circle is right here in the middle. So the radius is the distance from the center to the outside edge of the circle. So you want to either draw it horizontally or vertically so that you can count it easily. So if I count that, that's 5 units long. My radius is 5. Area of a circle is pi times your radius squared. So your radius squared here would be 25 times pi. You could put that in your calculator, but usually we just leave it as 25 times pi instead of putting it in our calculator and getting a decimal. Alright, find the area and perimeter of each figure shown below. So this is a rectangle, perimeter. This is 7, so this opposite side would be 7. This is 12, so this opposite side would be 12. If I add those 4 numbers up, 7, 7, 12, and 12, I would get 38. For the area, I take my length times my width, 7 times 12, I would get 84. This next one, for the triangle, to find the perimeter, add up the 3 sides, 16, 12, and 20. When you do that, you should get 48. For the area, these 2 sides, 16 and 12, are perpendicular, so you're going to use those as your base and your height. Area is 1/2 times your base times your height. 1/2 times base times height times 16 times 12. Your final answer would be 96. This one, tricky. So, perimeter, first of all, do not count this 8 in the middle. That is not outside the triangle. You want to only count the numbers outside the triangle. So 21, 17, and 10. If you add all those up, you're going to get 48 again. Now, whenever you see this dotted line inside a triangle and it's perpendicular to one of the sides of the triangle. This is going to be your height, and the side that it's perpendicular to is going to be your base. They're right there for you. Whenever you see that, that's your height, that's your base. So area is 1/2 times 8 times 21. When you multiply all that out, you would get 84 feet squared. Pay attention to our units here. Perimeter is always in just plain units. Area is always in units squared. Last one, this is half of a circle. So if I were to find the area of this whole circle, that whole circle, I would do pi times my radius squared. My radius is 9, so that would be 9 squared is 81 times pi. But this is only half of the circle, so I need to take that number and just divide it by 2. So 81 pi over 2, we're just going to leave it as a fraction, like that. 81 pi divided by 2. Perimeter. So I would need half of the circumference. The circumference would be 2 times pi times the radius. So 2 times pi times the radius is 9. 9 times 2 is 18, so that would be 18 pi. But, again, this is only half of the circle. So this piece right here would be half of this, so that would be 9 pi. But then I've also got this piece right here. This piece from here to here is 9. This piece from here to here would also be 9. So together, these would be 18. So my whole perimeter would be this piece plus this piece, or 9 pi plus 18. On the back, whenever you're given information like this, so these kinds of problems, you're always going to write the formula, then plug in what you have, and then solve for what you need. So this first one, A, says the area of a rectangle is 54 feet squared and the width is 12 feet. Well, I know the formula for the area of a rectangle. It's length times width. So that's my first step. Second step, plug in the information it gives you. So it tells us the area is 54 feet squared. Plug that in for A. 54 equals, it also tells us the width is 12. So I don't know the length. Length times width is 12. So now I need to solve for L. Well, 54 equals L times 12. To solve for L, I would divide by 12. 54 divided by 12 would give me 4.5 for H, or so H, I said base and height could also be used as length and width. Same thing. So 4.5 for the height or the length. Perimeter, now that we know that this is, so if we drew this out, we've got 4.5, oops, 4.5, 4.5, and then our width was 12, so 12 and 12, if we added all that up, we would get 33 for our perimeter. Next one, perimeter of a rectangle is 36, and the height is 8. Well, perimeter of a rectangle is 2 times the width plus 2 times the length. So plug in what you have. You have that the perimeter is 36. You've got that the height, or so we can change this to base and height. Like I said, those are interchangeable, so base and height. So 2 times the base plus 2 times, it tells us the height is 8. 36 would equal 2 times the base plus 16, 2 times 8. Solve for B, or here it tells you W, width, base, same thing. Subtract this, 20 equals 2 times the base, whoops, 2 times the base, so divide by 2, this would be 10. Now the area, so take your base times your height, or length times width, whatever you want to call it, 8 times 10, 80. Next one, area of a triangle is 40 centimeters squared. And the base is 10 centimeters. So area equals 1/2 times base times height. It tells us the area is 40, so 40 equals 1/2 times, we don't know our height, but we do know our base, 10 times our height. Half of 10 is 5 times h is 40. Solve for h. Divide by 5. H equals 8.